This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, April the 28th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams is produced the program. Let's get the week off to a flying start that requires your participation. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888 590 VOCM, which is 8626. So last check-in with the Allen Cup being participated in up in Ontario this past weekend. For the third straight year, the host is in the final. For the third straight year, the Clareville Caribou were in the final, and they come up short. The Wentworth Griffins win their first ever Allen Cup, a 9-5 result. And unfortunately, it was the second period. Clareville gave up 7 unanswered goals in the middle stanza, and so they come home with a second place result. And we see Dawson Mercer and Alex Snook participating in the NHL playoffs. Unfortunately, their respective teams are on the verge of elimination. Habs folded last night in the third period. 4 unanswered goals. The Caps beat them 5-2. And fantastic news for Riley Mercer. Riley's Dawson's brother, of course. He's a goaltender, played in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League last year with the Drummondville Voltigeurs. One of the best. Ranked second in wins, led the league in save percentage, shutouts, on the way to the league championship, of course. He's the franchise leader in games and minutes played, wins, shutouts, shutout wins, or shootout wins. Undrafted. And he kept going, he kept plugging, and now he has signed a professional contract with the Minnesota Wild to kick in next year. So bravo to Riley Mercer for getting that done. And good luck to all participants in the Royal Newfoundland Regiment High School Hockey Tournament. This is provincials. The best 16 girls and the best 16 boys hockey teams participating in Paradise and in St. John's. So kicks off today. 80 games, 2 arenas, 3 ice surfaces, 22 high schools, 32 teams, 750 players and bench staff, and of course led by a volunteer board of directors. That said, it's Volunteer Week, which began yesterday here in the province. There's some 210,000 people in the province who are indeed volunteers, and bravo to all hands. It is really very rewarding to not only try to help somebody else or support a cause, you get a lot of self-satisfaction from it as well. During the pandemic, a lot of organizations lost some of their volunteers. And unfortunately, many of those organizations did not see their volunteers come back into the fold. So if it's something that you'd like to consider, whether you be a senior and you have some additional free time as a retiree, and or anybody, right from high schoolers all the way through, we'd love to hear some stories from you to highlight who you think are a volunteer doing great work going unnoticed or not given enough attention to where you live, and whether it be one organization or one community. Happy to take that on today. All right, what does this say? So it's just about a couple of months ago, I got a bit of a fright when I was out for a walk because a dog was off leash. I'm not afraid of dogs, but it just caught me off guard. And it was a big German Shepherd, and it was like, I wasn't terrified, but I was like, ooh, because it just came around the corner right at me. I'm like, oh, man. And then you hear the story coming from Mount Pearl, where the RNC were called to assist Mount Pearl Animal Control. There was a woman attacked and seriously injured by a dog. So there was a couple of other people in the house, and they were safely evacuated. The dog's eventually been put down. The woman is charged with criminal negligence, causing bodily harm, and, of course, breaches of court orders. No surprise there. So between the off-leash business, and if you're someone who goes out walking just for a walk yourself and or walking your dog, the amount of dog poo people don't pick up is pathetic. I mean, just pick it up, right? The doggy poo bags are widely available, and so it'd be great if people did that. And then I continue every week to get emails regarding, say, for instance, the cost, the prohibitive cost for many to deal with veterinarian clinics, many of which now are under corporate control, and it is expensive. There's no doubt about it, and it is not regulated. And not every clinic is created equal. You know, different overhead costs, different locations in the province and what have you, but I get a lot of talk about the vets. In addition to that, we had to make our own decision whether or not to buy pet insurance, which we did. And I know the alternative is to set aside that premium every month and just put it in a pet insurance bank account as opposed to purchase insurance. So if you've got some insight to lend on any of those fronts, we can do it. Oh, so I mentioned it's Volunteer Week this week, Volunteer Appreciation Week. It's also the National Day of Mourning, and this regarding people who have lost their lives or are injured or experienced illness due to work. When I saw the story and I read the numbers, I was a little bit surprised. Last year in this province, 26 people lost their lives due to work-related issues, 15 from occupational disease, and 11 as a result of fatal incidents. Over the past 5 years, 124 workers lost their lives. This is coming directly from Workplace NL's website. So the numbers sound high. They are staggeringly high. And no one wants to go to work to come home hurt or not come home at all. So I guess we all owe it to ourselves to not only, refuse unsafe work, but for workplaces to be committed to worker safety, because those numbers, I was really surprised when I read them, as high as they are. But there you go. That's the issue. All right. Spoke to this one last week regarding what people perceive as an unsafe downtown core here in the city of St. John's. Apparently, the numbers don't stack up to any sort of heightened spike in the number of calls for the RNC. Whether it be the pedestrian wall, and it did not feel as comfortable this past year as it had years past or years prior. So the call from the City Hall, including the Mayor, was for the RNC to instate a foot patrol. For most of us, I think that sounds like it makes sense. If the people in the downtown core know that there are going to be cops on foot steadily up and down the strip, whether it be up and down Duckworth, up and down Water Street, you would hope that would make things better. The constabulary themselves say there's been studies into this that is basically just perception as opposed to actually makes the place safer. Then they go on to say that police, of course, have to prioritize and be able to respond to the more urgent calls, and they say this type of use of resources is unwise. There were 10 additional officers budgeted in the most recent provincial budget, but the RNC say the studies just are quite clear, is that it does not make it safer. It simply makes the perception of a safer community, because we all think, whether it be on the highway, nothing slows you down like a cop car, and nothing slows you down regarding the want to commit a crime if when you see the police right there where you are and know that they're right around the corner. Now, of course, they do indeed have, police cruisers and unmarked vehicles that have whatever protocols in place for patrolling that particular part of the city, but they say that it's just the perception is safer as opposed to actually making the place safer. Calls remain stable, apparently, from 2023 to 2024, but there you go. And of course, some money's been passed over to a couple of organizations downtown in an effort to provide, whether it be additional training for bar staff and other avenues to hopefully keep people safe, because the stories, I guess they grab the headlines, and when you start talking about public safety, even if the numbers haven't changed, it's that way you feel, because public safety is a sentiment as much as it is just raw numbers of calls to the RNC, but I thought that was interesting. And in that world, the speed cameras, there's a couple of people who that's apparently their number one concern, and they write me constantly talking about the fact that this is government overreach. And again, like I've been happy to say, I think speed cameras are a good idea, and I hope that will slow people down, because that's the goal. And if we look at the 3-month pilot project in Paradise and Mount Pearl, in 3 months, 94,000 incidents of the camera catching people going at least 11 kilometres over the speed limit. Of course, no fines were issued, but this go-around they will be. And then it's the concept, and this is a fair concern people have, is, so many people with those opaque license plate covers that the cameras can't pick up your license plate. And how many people out there still have those plates with the paint peeled off? And of course, the cameras won't pick those up either. So we need the police to be issuing warnings, which is an unfortunate use of police resources as well. But if people are knowing that, well, they just got to go to whatever hardware store or Canadian Tire and get a license plate cover to protect me from the camera's all-seeing lens, then people are going to do it. All right. Let's get into it. Federal Election Day. Other than the 7.3 million Canadians who are eligible to vote and did so in the advance polls, today the rest of the country who are eligible have a chance to cast their ballot for the candidate they prefer. A lot of this really does lean in on the leaders. It's interesting in this province, there's only 2 incumbents running. Joanne Thompson in St. John's East, and of course Clifford Small out in Central Coast, Bays, Notre Dame. And so there's going to be a really different look slate of 7 parliamentarians representing this province this time tomorrow. So let's get into it. The different parties have pretty different strategies as it pertains to their overarching message. For the Liberals, of course, a staunch focus on Donald Trump. I mean, it's been front and center of their campaign the entire way. And people say, well, why are we worried about Donald Trump? Well, the economy and the trade with the Americans, of course, is important. Now, that does not mean we cannot and should not look back at the three previous Liberal governments, and we will. The Conservatives, of course, it's all about change. For the NDP, it's all about, for the people. And then we can get into Bloc Québécois. So, of course, the campaign really fizzled out somewhat based on a senseless tragedy in Vancouver at the Filipino festival Lapu Lapu Day. I mean, what a story. It's just horrific, heartbreaking. 11 people are dead after a 30-year-old took an SUV and plowed into the folks who were there celebrating. 17 remain in hospital. He has been arrested. At this moment in time, 8 counts of second-degree murder charges have been laid, with likely more to come. The police say it is not an act of terror, even though I would imagine there was a fair amount of terror around the scene. So that, of course, really did take away some of the focus, and rightfully so, on politics. All right. So it's really close. I don't know what poll to believe. I don't know how much credence I put into them. I don't pay a lot of attention to the polls necessarily, but it really does look like it's pretty close. This will be the Politics 101. The party that is the most successful with getting their supporters out is going to stand a better chance of winning this election, and it is a consequential election. No question about it. If the Liberals were successful, under, of course, leader Mark Carney, then it would be the first time our government would enter into a fourth term for 114 years ago, back to Wilfrid Laurier. So, really uncertain times. And we need serious people for these serious times. But unfortunately, the need to try to sift through the lies and the half-truths and the exaggerations and the misinformation and the disinformation has been a struggle. It really has. Social media, I don't know if I can recall 2019 that clearly insofar as what social media looked and felt like, but it is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. The electorate is angry. Now, what percentage of that anger is aimed at what party or what leader? I'll leave that up to you. And we can get into the issues as you see fit here this morning. Some of the pledges that have been made, some of the absolute exaggerations that have got into the minds of the voters, and some people can't be convinced based on one fact or another because they think what they think and they're going to vote how they want to vote. And that's your right. You do whatever you see fit. But it has been an unbelievable battle to try to get down to the brass tacks of what's real and what's not. So we can take it on, if you're so inclined, on any front. So let's just say the polls are as close as they seem to be. The prospect of another minority parliament is right in front of us. I don't think necessarily a minority parliament is a bad thing, but it really depends which party is given the chance to govern, because that's basically what a minority parliament means. You're offered the chance to govern. You need the support of other members of parliament from other parties if you're in a minority position. So we know last go around, the NDP in their supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals, and what that meant for that party, what it meant for certain programs to be introduced. But we very well might find ourselves in that predicament, or that circumstance again tomorrow. It does look like the NDP are in a tough spot. Regardless of what they were able to achieve with their relationship with the Liberal government, they really do look like they're struggling mightily, even in some particular NDP strongholds into the past. So what that looks like, because we know for sure the Liberal Party would not, quote-unquote, prop up a Conservative minority, and vice versa. There's no way the Conservatives would, quote-unquote, prop up a Liberal minority. So we might indeed tomorrow find ourselves in a place where the Bloc Québécois may have significant power, which is not great. I mean, it's always been troublesome for me that we are paying members of Parliament and everything that goes with it for a party whose only role in this world is to only do what's good for Quebec and shag everyone else. Which, I mean, on the national stage is unhelpful. This is a big country with different regional differences and disparities, and the hope that the electorate, regardless of the result, gets in behind this and we try to get on solid footing, with the Bloc holding all the power, that simply means more power to Quebec-related issues. For instance, it guarantees hands-off supply management, which is a conversation that we can have. And then things like people pledging all these pipelines and east-west corridors. If the Bloc have any sniff or semblance of power, a lot of that stuff probably won't happen. Because the obvious. So minority parliament may indeed be right there in front of us. And then we can talk about how the different parties handle the media. And yes, we can talk about how the media has handled the campaign. 100% available for that conversation. And then it's the issue regarding foreign interference. It's real. And unless that interference is opposing the party you prefer, you're willing to just accept it. When, again, it goes all the way back to the absolute fight to try to get down to who's actually telling the closest to the truth and or the truth, or who's peddling the BS that is unfortunately predominates regardless of what party you support. And so let's get into it. A couple of things, I'm getting lots of concerns from different people about the integrity of the result. That's so unfortunate. Whichever party is successful tonight, the results will be verified by very careful consideration of the rules regarding Elections Canada's handling of the election. To have to go out to the news media and say you can use a pen or a pencil. And then the issue regarding how the votes are counted. Every single candidate in the 343 ridings in this country has the right to put a scrutineer representing them in the room when the ballots are being counted. So let's just hope, regardless of which party comes up short tonight, for so many of their supporters are willing to all of a sudden mimic what we've seen south of the border and call it rigged and stolen and all that is going to be a devastating outcome, and let's avoid that at all costs. The rules here are much different than they are in the United States. Vastly different. Not even in the same realm. So let's see how people react to it. And of course, some of the issues that have been front and center here, things like interprovincial trade. We just entered into a memorandum of understanding with New Brunswick last week, so we can take that on. I think the concept of Buy Canadian has been important for the country, important for Canadian jobs, important for the Canadian consumer. So all of those things, let's do it. And of course, come Sunday, the 3rd of May, we'll have a new premier, which will be elected by some almost 14,000 registered Liberal supporters and voters. So anything in the provincial world, and of course everything on the federal campaign trail, and anything under the sun that's important enough for you to consider calling, we can talk about that as well. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's try to have a great show to kick off the week. Corey wants to talk about the federal election, then we'll speak with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1, the top of the board. Corey, you're on the air. Good morning, Corey. You're on the air.
Yeah, thanks. So I was just thinking today, most people have their mind made up who they're going to vote for at this point. A lot of us voted a week ago in the advance voting.
Yep.
But my suggestion to any listeners this morning is that if you're satisfied with the last 10 years, then go ahead and vote for the incumbents, because I believe that the only thing that's changed with the Liberal government is the leader. The same candidates are there, the same policies are there, the same handlers are there, the same people handing notes to Mark Carney are the same ones in the debate were the same ones handing them to Trudeau for his debates. So if you're satisfied with the last 10 years, Liberal is probably your choice. If you're looking for change, then I guess the only other party that you could consider would be the Conservatives. They're offering a plan for change. I wouldn't buy into the fear. I would probably give them a chance, just because, we can't make a decision based on what the opposition say they will do. Why not give them a chance and see what they're going to do? We can always vote them out in 4 years.
Sure. So is there anything about, other than not liking the Liberals or not being pleased with the last 10 years, what inside the Conservative plan do you consider a plan for change? Like, what does that include?
Well, it mostly includes getting our energy resources to market instead of leaving them in the ground. That is the foundation for everything. Like, there's just no funds in the coffer without a strong economy. And nothing that the Liberals are offering would indicate there will be a strong economy. I'm as progressive as the next person. I just believe that we have to be able to afford the social programs that we're looking after.
The affordability issue, inside the Conservative platform, they talk about unleashing the energy capacity of the country. fair enough, but that also includes some pretty rosy numbers regarding production of various forms of energy to make the platform work. You know, even like in just my province, talking because I see you're coming from a 204. I don't know if you are living in this province or not, Corey, if you don't mind me asking.
No, I'm from Newfoundland. I grew up here, but I've been living out west, Midwest actually, Manitoba.
Okay. So they talk about doubling oil production here. I mean, if you talk to the industry, that's a real sound good, feel good, right? But the investment of infrastructure and the markets, I mean, I talk to people in the industry all the time. They love the sound of it. Even the provincial Liberal government here talked about doubling oil production, and it hasn't happened. I mean, you'd have to find twice the amount of oil that's already been found to even approach doubling production, of which, I mean, we have a major find here at Bay du Nord that the company itself, they understand the nature of the field, they understand the potential billions of barrels of recoverable oil, and still haven't made a move on it. So that's one of those feel goods that, you know, they really have taken some aspirational hope about the value that can be generated here, the jobs that can be created, the royalties that can flow. So that's one thing. And even in the world of Bill 69, which is a real bugaboo for conservatives, they talk about it a lot, right? Bill C-69 was given royal assent in 2019. And I hear all the time that there was 16 projects killed and billions of dollars lost because of that bill. But a bunch of those projects inside the 16, they were gone before 2019. Whether it be provincial decisions that were made, court challenges that were offered, business models that were withdrawn. So Bill 69 has been one of those things that people are hanging their hat on. But the 16 projects and billions of dollars is extremely misleading, regardless if you hate the Liberals or love the Conservatives or vice versa. So we've just that's where I struggled this election campaign, Corey, is trying to get down to what's real and what's just aspirational, what's a lie, what's a half-truth, what's an exaggeration. And I think there's a lot of that to sift through. It's been very difficult.
Right, but what we have an opportunity here is getting things started. The aspirations to fulfill all the Conservative goals might be unrealistic, but at least they'll get something started. And it's going to be 10 years before we get to the production capability that the Conservatives are wanting. So, I mean, that's 2-3 governments down the line. But I feel like if we get started on a lot of these pipelines and extraction, then when the next government comes in after that, no matter what, Liberal, Conservative, or whatever, the ball will already be rolling and we can continue on. The appetite, unfortunately, the appetite for to fight climate change isn't there in this election like it was for the last 3. So this is the opportunity now to produce our energy. And I think the good thing about the last 10 years and the Liberals is that they put in enough markers that oil production has become more sustainable and cleaner.
Yeah, pipelines. I mean, there's been a bit of, I don't know, wishy-washy comments coming from Mr. Carney, you know, depending on where he is in front of what crowd, about building pipelines. And, of course, then when asked closer to the French debate that he would not force one upon the province of Quebec, where provincial jurisdiction is still going to matter here. And even some of the concerns with the twinning of the Trans Mountain pipeline, you know, I find the pipeline conversation pretty interesting, to be honest. And Conservatives talk about it a lot, but under Harper, they didn't build 1 centimetre of pipeline to Tidewater, which I think is just a real strange, you know, conflicting reality versus commentary. And I really wonder what the appetite is for the world, the private investment and or the government to build pipelines. I mean, just look at what the Trans Mountain costs, what, $34 billion? Is that business model there for anyone else into the future? Boy, I really don't know. How about you? You think we're actually going to see pipelines built if the Conservatives are successful?
I do. I like. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. But once the production is there, the production is there. You don't have to. Once a pipeline is built, all you have to do is maintain it. You don't have to build it over and over again.
No.
And then once we're self-sufficient, we can afford a stronger military. We can afford stronger health care. We can afford everything that's lacking in this country right now, and we can stand up to countries like the U.S. who want to come in and develop what we haven't been developing.
Which we don't have. That doesn't need to be part of our reality into the future. We should avoid that at all costs. We really, absolutely should avoid that at all costs.
And that's something all parties have been consistent in their messaging about.
Corey,
standing up to the U.S.
I'm sorry, pardon me. You say you're as progressive as the next person. Is there anything inside the Conservative voting record that would give you pause as someone who says that you're as progressive as the next guy? Because there's been the voting record does not necessarily display progressive. Because gone is that word inside the party, right? It used to be the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, and now it's not. And we understand the mishmash of the Reform side of the party and the PC side of the party. But are you concerned with any of these progressive issues that seem to be not aligned with Conservative Party messaging?
What social issues are we talking about? Are we talking about like women's rights?
No, I didn't necessarily mean that. But, I mean, you talk about the fuel for social programs. And then, it's the voting record, whether it be on things like increasing the eligibility age for old age security and the like to 67. Whether or not there should be a 10% increase, just like the folks who were 75 plus inside the old age security. That, the Conservatives voted for it when the Bloc put it forward late last year. But then, of course, on the heels of it said they wouldn't do it. So, I mean, there's things like that where I don't know how progressive that would be. Expanding as planned the dental care plan for people between the ages of 18 and 64. Those types of issues that I think are... let me just ask you one specific one. Is, added to their English platform was the want to do away with, quote-unquote, woke ideology. What does woke mean to you? Because I think it means different things to different people.
Well, okay, there's a lot there, but I'll respond to the last thing you said about woke ideology. I think, unfortunately, woke ideology, which was a great idea to put forward, and I think it's achieved a lot for equality in the workplace and in our communities. I think it got hijacked and went too far. And now we see a lot of protests happening in pride parades, like getting shut down by terrorist groups and those sort of things. So it's hard to know where woke ideology is these days. And I think it helped our society move forward progressively. But at the same time, it's like a lot of things. It gains a lot of momentum, and a lot of special interest groups try to latch onto it and defeats the initial message. Yeah. So I don't think it's a valid question this election this time around. But I'll just go back to something else you said, because you mentioned a few different.
I did. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thoughts there. So there is a social conservative component to the Conservative Party. I know that still exists, who are very right wing. I'm thankful that the PPC was created a couple of elections ago, because that took a lot of those social conservatives with them, and they can take their hardcore right-wing ideas with them, and that is helping bring the Conservative Party of Canada back to the centre. And to be honest with you, they're the closest party to the centre right now. The Liberals have basically taken over the entire left. They moved further left, and it was a non-hostile takeover of the NDP, which are about to be decimated this election. And the Bloc also, you would consider them to be far left of centre. The Liberals seem to be poised to eat their lunch as well.
It's, there's a likely outcome tomorrow that the Bloc Québécois will hold a significant amount of power in this country, if indeed we see a minority parliament in place, because the Liberals and the Conservatives would not prop each other up. It would basically boil back down to the Bloc at that point, because it won't be the Greens and it won't be independents. And if the NDP polling numbers play out the way they look, then we're going to have an interesting conversation here about which government gives which party.
All the polls are looking like a Liberal, likely a majority. I think it's going to get very interesting if it's a Liberal minority. And I know you've given me a lot of time there. Thank you for that. But I'll leave you with my thoughts on what I think is going to happen here tomorrow. What I say, or later tonight. My thoughts are Liberal minority with the Bloc and the NDP again holding the balance of power. That won't be many seats, because we need to get to 172, and I think the Liberals will be just shy of 172. But what that vacuum will cause in the NDP is the immediate resignation of Jagmeet Singh, and I think everyone thinks that's the most likely scenario for the NDP after this.
I have a funny feeling that...
The NDP, I'll just finish my thought. I'll only take another 30 seconds, and I'm looking forward to your response. Once the NDP get a new leader, I think they'll get a bump from that, and I think they'll pull the plug on the minority government soon after that, and then with hopes that in the following election, they'll get a bump in the polls. And we all know that the Conservatives' best opportunity to govern is when there's a strong NDP. So that's what I envision in the next couple of years.
I appreciate your time, Corey. Thanks for doing it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Whichever party is successful this evening, their leader, of course, will become Prime Minister, well, given the chance to govern, and that leader will, of course, remain in place. All the other leaders? Probably not. I don't imagine Mr. Poilievre hangs on for too long if that party doesn't win. I can't see Mark Carney sitting in the opposition benches for very long, to be honest with you. I think Mr. Singh, the writing is seemingly on the wall here. Like even in their most recent conventions, you know, his support inside the card-carrying NDP members was waning. So if they get, as Corey said, decimated, I think that will result in him being done. You know, and then you look around the Greens, what have you. I mean, I wonder, will they even hold on to their seats? I mean, there's questions about different leaders, whether or not they'll hold on to the seat, and I don't know what the vote result will be tonight, but we'll all find out the exact same time. All right, today's a good day to get on the program, so do exactly that during this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Donna. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Doing well, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good. I was listening regarding like the elections and everything that's going to be happening, and my concern is like I hear a lot with Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney and Mr. Singh, and like I'm not really hearing anything in our province. It's like they're piggybacking on, you know, the big guys in Ottawa. But, like, I'm not hearing them say anything like, you know, they're going to protect the fisheries. They're going to, you know, help people in Newfoundland because we are one of the highest tax provinces in Canada. So, like, they're going to try to lower our tax for us or maintain or, you know, put a cap on housing and all this stuff. It's like all I hear is Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney and Mr. Singh. And I'm not really hearing anything from like NDP, Liberal, and PC here.
So are you mentioned a couple of specific areas that you're concerned with. Like, for instance, protecting the fishery. I think both have sort of tiptoed around it. I mean, Mr. Poilievre's rally was in Petty Harbour, and they spoke to fishery-related matters. Mr. Carney talked about the potential to restructure DFO and whatnot. We hear people talk about protecting the inshore versus the commercial fleet. So some of that fishery-related talk has been happening, not to the extent that many people would like, I would think. And housing, I mean, of course, we're talking about the Liberals' position is the Housing Accelerator Fund and what that's meant. Mr. Poilievre says he'll do away with that and focus in on things like incentivizing municipalities to build quicker, and, you know, some of the slogans regarding boots, not suits, and some of that stuff. There's a lack of detail in a lot of this anyway. You know, there's also Mr. Poilievre talking about fast-tracking permits, whether it be for energy projects and or housing. Mr. Carney, the Liberals, talking about building, you know, a couple of 100,000 homes regarded like modular homes and whatnot. So there's some, but like everything else on the election campaign, campaigning proves to be easy. Governing is hard.
Yeah, and, you know, they can say whatever they want.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, they need to follow through with it. You know, like you can make all kinds of promises to the people, and we can get sucked into it, and we'll say, oh, yeah, we're going to vote for this guy because he's going to do this. And it seemed like with Trudeau, like they had this big thing with Pierre Poilievre and Trudeau, they were fighting about all this housing and stuff, and it seemed like when Trudeau was almost finished, then he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start building houses. A little late, you know, like you should have been doing this in the beginning. That way, you know, we'd have all that faith in our politicians, but, you know, we're not getting that. And Newfoundland, like, it seems that everything is centered around like the crab fishery, offshore fishing, recreation fishing, but there's a lot more to Newfoundland than that.
Of course.
You know, we got carpenters, we got millwrights, we got masons, we got all these other people, that are not even working right now. A lot of them aren't because there's nothing there. Now housing, I would say, is most carpenters are busy, but for other people, it's difficult, and everyone's leaving Newfoundland again to go find work. We need to stay home.
We do. There's inside the Conservative platform, they're talking about bringing back apprenticeship grants up to $4,000. But when any party, regardless, talking about we're going to train or skill up, and I think for the Conservatives, we're talking about 350,000 people to be tradespeople over the course of 5 years. That also requires 350,000 young people to want to be in the trades. So we don't kind of match up promises with reality on the ground. Similar to things like double oil production. It sounds good for people who are focused on the oil industry, but in reality, is that even a thing? I'm not so sure about that. And housing, what's remarkable to me in the housing conversation is primarily it's provincial and even more so municipal jurisdiction. The federal government kind of walked away from housing decades ago. It wasn't a focus area. I think it's fair to say all the way back to whether it be the end of the Second World War or certainly into the 70s, the federal government kind of gave up on focusing on housing and left it up to everybody else. CMHC, they haven't been building much in the way of non-profit affordable houses for a long, long time. So that we've got to get back to a house being a place to live as opposed to simply representing personal equity, because of course that's important. I'm a homeowner. I need my equity in my home eventually when I go to downsize or retire, what have you, but we need to build affordable rentals as well. The country started to move aggressively, especially in the big centers. All we built was condos, and now look at so many people don't want to live in them. They're so expensive, as opposed to a focus on building some rental properties, which people want. Obviously, vacancy where I live is around 1%, and even if you find a place, they're pretty expensive.
They are, and like these homeowners and builders and that, they look for this. They know that people are going to have to pay a lot of money to rent, like square footage, And I see all these little mini homes being popped up everywhere. You get like 3 or 4 in a block. And especially outside of St. John's, they're popping up everywhere. But there's a lot of new Canadians that can't move outside of St. John's because they don't have proper transportation, like their own vehicle. A lot of them have to use the metro system. So, nobody's really benefiting, except for people that have vehicles, I guess.
Yeah, and then it's access to services, and it's to feel like you're part of a community. And for the most part, most of the newcomer communities have been in the larger centres. Not to say that there aren't newcomers to the country who live in rural Canada, because of course there are. But I think people understand the point I'm making. And transportation and the like, you're absolutely right on that front. And I think there's tons of Canadians, newcomers or otherwise, that they don't need the traditional single detached home that was peppered all across the country forever and a day. A modular home or tiny home might be exactly what the doctor ordered for a lot of people. They don't need the space. They live on their own. Upkeep and introductory costs and the upkeep costs are vastly different than, for instance, the home I live in. So I think there's an appetite out there, and I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to see into the future. Not for everybody, and we're going to see population density be part of the conversation. Build up, not out, and I think that's happening for the most part, which makes sense economically speaking. People might not like the changing nature of their neighborhood, but that's coming as well.
It's going to have to come. Like, we need more room. We need more people to have homes.
Yep.
We don't need a tent community. We don't need people staying in hotels if they don't need to. Things got to change.
And regarding the tent cities, as people call them, one thing that we've heard very recently from Mr. Polyev is basically criminalize it. They talk about give police more powers to do something, but the power is already in the hands of the police. But as opposed to trying to deal with the issue that is homelessness, I don't know why we're treating it as a criminal justice issue rather than a societal issue. So some of those things, I know that's appetizing to many of their so-called base, if we're talking about conservative policy, but that's just a ham-fisted approach to a very complex issue as far as I'm concerned. Let's just say the police get involved in disbanding all the 10 cities around the country. Yeah. And then what happens to the people? I mean, that doesn't get broached there. They're going to be somewhere. So we're either going to just move them on to another place to be homeless, or we're going to put them in jail. And being homeless is not a crime. So where do people go? Again, that's one of those feel-goods. We're going to disband all the tent cities. Okay, then what? Because that's the most important question.
What percentage of people actually benefits from you, like, cutting down all the tents and moving people off? It's not everybody. You know, so like a certain percentage of people do not like it because it's in their communities. You know, but where are you going to put them? It's a real sin. Where are you going to put them?
Because they're going to be somewhere. They just don't disappear.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
That's kind of left out of the conversation here, because even when we disbanded the tent city across from Confederation Building, and even when we disbanded the one by down the Colonial Building, the same people that were there are still somewhere. You know, we didn't solve anything.
They didn't leave the province.
No, they didn't evaporate. You know, we're just we could focus on the easy part. The hard part is trying to deal with the issue. The hard part is trying to find people a path to having a safe, dignified, healthy place to live, which is a complicated issue. But we do a great job of oversimplifying these complex things, which doesn't get us anywhere. It just doesn't.
That's right.
Anyway, so the tent is gone from Bannerman Park. So what now? It's down by the river. It's gone from the Confederation Building, and then it's out Bowery Park. So that's not settling anything. It doesn't solve one iota. Donna, I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for calling.
You're welcome, Patty, and I hope you have a great day.
The same to you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Again, I think that's where we are, though, is we look at the issue and we find a very, say, fundamental, what looks to be an easy approach, but it's only halfway. You can move that tent from wherever in any city in this country, but moving the tent didn't solve anything. I know it feels better when you don't see the tents popping up to the extent that we have in the country. Of course, and I get that. 100% understand that. But just moving someone out of one spot just sends them to another spot. And so, as opposed to a couple of areas that people refer to as tent cities, and you disband them, the people there are still homeless. So that's the complicated part. That's the hard part. Tearing down a tent is the easy part, right? All you need are, you know, a couple of hands, and you tear down the poles and you roll up the canvas, and all of a sudden we pretend the issue is settled. It's not. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Interesting point made by a listener via email during the break. When I said, you know, we could find ourselves in a minority parliament again, with possibly the Bloc Québécois having some semblance of power, at least proximity to power, and how that might not be a very good thing. And the listener pointed out, and this is fair, is that when we saw these non-confidence motions being tabled, one was done, of course, by the Bloc Québécois, who sort of misread the power tea leaves, I would suggest. But one of it was hands-off supply management. And in addition to that, the other part of that non-confidence motion was to make sure there's a 10% increase for seniors 65 to 74, just like there are for 75 plus. So, as the listener rightfully points out, quite likely, even though the Conservatives have said they would not do that, and the Liberals have not done that, if the Bloc is the party supporting a minority parliament, then that might happen. And that's a very good point, because it's something that the Bloc have absolutely said repeatedly, that that's going to be one of the keys to getting any support from them. The concept of as to whether or not the Bloc is good for the country, and don't take it from me, take it from their leader and all their members and all their supporters. All they care about is what's good for Quebec. And of course, Quebec seniors obviously would benefit from a 10% increase in old age security for 65 plus, as would the rest of the country. But most everything else that they would lean in on would only be measured by one metric, and whether or not that's good for Quebec. So even if the Conservatives, if they're successful, we're just painting hypotheticals here because I don't know what's going to happen, but if the Bloc is in a position to keep a Conservative minority parliament in place, then things like unleashing energy, that is fully compromised. Because, say, for instance, an east-west oil pipeline, like Energy East that was once proposed, that doesn't happen if the Bloc has any say at all. So it's going to be fascinating to see, you know, and I don't know, we might not have a minority, we might have someone who wins a majority tonight, but that minority is going to really have a major impact on whichever party is successful and their party platform. Because the Bloc will do what's good for the Bloc, not what's good for the country. And they've proven it time and time again. Then it was, you know, I get the same emails fairly frequently when we talk about the concept and the issue, whether it be tent cities or just homelessness, period. And it generally boils down to this. People need to fend for themselves. And I don't argue people need to fend for themselves, and I try to fend for myself, as does the rest of my family. But the fact is, if people are homeless, and some of it may be through no fault of their own, and there's lots of life circumstances that might lead someone to experience homelessness, but the fact of the matter is, even if you say they have to, fend for themselves, fair enough, but it comes with an immediate cost. And there's no flipping switches that move someone off of the street, whether it be to get some job skill training, get your GED, or to find appropriate housing, all the different issues that become part of a different life and a different set of circumstances. The fact of the matter is, homelessness costs us money. And if you are solely focused on the bottom line, talk about government spending, then that really has to factor in somewhere. The two most expensive things in the country are a night in hospital and a night in the clinic. And the potential to find yourself in either or as a result of being homeless is real. Even in healthcare, these are not numbers that we just make up. These are numbers that have come from well understood exercises and examinations. I keep leaning in on one because I think it's the best one to lean on. From the teaching hospital in Toronto, they looked at 1,000 admissions, half of which were homeless people and half of which were not. The homeless, much more prone to chronic underlying conditions, and what the end result was is that those who were homeless spent twice as long and consequently cost twice as much to be in the hospital as folks who were housed. That's very real. So as much as we say, look, we'll give you this little bit of leg up, we'll give you a little bit of support, and then you're on your own. The fact of the matter is, it's expensive. Homelessness does indeed come with not only a societal cost, a moral cost, but a financial cost, even if you just look at healthcare. And those facts and those numbers are undeniable. We know it to be true. So it's again a matter of politicians who will pick the easy play, the low-hanging fruit, as they say, and think that all of a sudden that has solved the issue, when probably hasn't. Anyway, let's try to get to the news on time. First, we're on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. I'm getting lots of notes privately here in social media, talking about the fact that apparently Spain and Portugal have a massive blackout, and what that means in the big scheme of things, I'm not sure, but obviously awful to live through. I've got a friend of mine in Portugal right this very moment, so I suppose they're living it real time. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Fred and Paul are in the queue to talk about the election, and of course it needn't just be about the election today. It can be about whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Fred, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
Good, thank you. I've been listening to some of your callers this morning calling in about the election.
Sure.
And some of the things they've said. Let's see how my memory is here now. Talking about the homeless people. Now, you said that they're going to end up in jail. But that's not even part of what Mr. Polyev said. He said anything but that. He's going to train them for work. He's going to find them temporary and permanent housing. Now, this stuff is not going to happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. It's going to take a while.
Sure. And what he also said, though, Fred, is he's going to give the police more powers. They already have the powers. I mean, look no further at what happened at the Colonial Building, Tent City here. Who disbanded that? The police. So they already have those powers. So
but it wasn't the PC. It wasn't the Conservatives. They didn't do it, and they're not planning to do it now. He never mentioned one thing about putting people in jail. He wants to get them treatment for their drug addiction if they have it. He wants to get them temporary and permanent housing. He wants to train them for jobs. All wonderful things, I think, don't you?
All makes sense. My specific comment, what I said is, to say something like give the police more power is just leaning in on the fact that that's so-called criminalizing homelessness. The police already have every power they need to deal with it. So that's like an unnecessary addition to wanting to help people, to want to find them temporary and then permanent housing, to want to give them some job training, to want to give them help with their addictions or their mental health struggles. So the mention of the police is just completely unnecessary, because the police can already do exactly what they've done in the past many times in many tent cities right across the country.
That's fine. Yeah, the other thing is, another lady said something about doubling the oil production, and you said that's going to take years. But we have we have the capability of producing 400,000 barrels a day. 130,000 barrels right now is coming from halfway around the world in Saudi Arabia and going to New Brunswick. We can provide that from Hibernia, and it won't take any great amount of time or investment because the facility is already there. So the tanker can pull up to Hibernia, fill her up, and go off to New Brunswick.
It already can today.
Pardon?
We can already look. The government of Canada doesn't buy oil from Saudi Arabia. You hear that all the time.
No. But he's going to ban the Saudi oil. That's the plan.
Let's just take that a step further, because that's interesting, though, isn't it? So, what that says, and I'm not trying to be a hyperbolic here, but to ban Saudi oil basically is telling the private sector what they can and cannot do, where they can and cannot buy, whatever it is, whatever material, in this case, oil.
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea, actually. I mean, here we have it. Why should we pay a dictatorship for dirtier oil to come halfway around the world in a tanker that's spewing pollution all over the place? I mean, that's ridiculous. I
understand the concept, but again, it is basically telling private companies what they can and cannot do, which is...
Well, that happens every day. I mean, every company is under all kinds of regulations,
Yeah, not
insofar as what they want.
Yeah, not insofar as what they can buy.
Oh, so yes, absolutely. And then there's our fishery. We have a guaranteed fisheries minister in the Conservatives, who's already a member. If he gets re-elected, he's going to be Minister of Fisheries if the Conservatives form the government.
That's very likely true.
Yeah, and he is an experienced person in the fisheries.
He is.
We haven't had that for years and years and years. We really need that. I mean, our fishery is one of our lifeblood. Well, it's one of the two lifebloods of our economy, the fishery and the oil and gas. And what we need is a Conservative government who is going to promote that. Do you think Carney really now, after 28 years of his net zero and everything else, and his wife and his daughter both being involved in all sorts of conservation and also the net zero concept, do you really think that he's going to drop that after putting his whole life into it?
Probably not.
And all of a sudden promote oil and gas and all these things? He's not going to do it. It's ridiculous to even think of it. He's not going to repeal C-69. That our gas and oil industry will go to zero with Carney. With Poilievre, it'll double. Let's put it this way: it has the potential. It has the potential of doubling with Carney. It has the potential of going to zero with Carney. Now, who knows what's really going to happen? But you can read the past. Nobody turns off their life's work overnight and goes in the totally opposite direction. That doesn't happen. So to expect that to happen with Carney is absolutely ludicrous.
Here's a question. So we talk about Bill C-69 a lot. And, the Conservatives use 16 projects, billions of dollars lost. But what's failed to be understood in those comments is that, royal assent was given to 69 in 2019. And over half of those 16 projects were shelved before Bill C-69 is one thing. And inside the world of doubling oil production, I guess the question would be, why wasn't oil production doubled before Bill C-69? Because, even the Liberals in the 2015 platform provincially, part of their policy platform was to double oil production. And what happened? It didn't.
Yeah. So okay, so that was the Liberals too. It wasn't the Conservatives. The Conservatives said they're going to double it, and they've said how they're going to do it. So why would you think something different? We've got a chance under the Conservatives of Newfoundland becoming a rich province again. Under Carney, we can go back to the days when the fish merchants rule the roost. What do you want?
Fair enough. Let's talk about the fishery for 1 second. And, you would think, conceptually speaking, have a Minister of Fisheries from this province would be helpful. And we have had that in the past. And there's a couple of examples that we can give. But what exactly changes? And what needs to change? Because, to say it's going to be better is one thing. But what are some of the things that can change for the benefit, say, primarily for the inshore? And what do you think the Conservatives are pitching on that front?
Okay, I'm not a real big person on fishery. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know a little about it. I know right now that if you have a bycatch of over a certain amount, you have to throw the whole issue back in the water, which is absolutely ridiculous because it's dead fish and it's food that we can eat. And so we'll just apply it to the overall quota. And keep the stuff and process it and let people eat it. It's food. Why throw it back when it's dead for the fish to eat? The other thing is the licenses. We've got an awful lot of Newfoundland fishing licenses in the hands of foreigners who don't live in our country, who don't do anything to help our country, don't pay any taxes here, but they have our fishing licenses. Polly it says that he will take those licenses back, rescind them or cancel them or whatever it is, and let the Newfoundlanders and the Canadians have the benefit of the fish that's represented by those licenses.
Right. Most of those are offshore, so it's not necessarily an inshore boon that comes as a result of that. And it's maybe a little bit easier said than done. But bycatch is an interesting one, and I'm with you 100%. It is ridiculous what we do with bycatch. There's other countries, like when we talk oil, we talk Norway. When we talk fish, we could talk Iceland. They use every single bit of bycatch. You might not get the same price as, if it was in season and if you had a license for it, but catch it, bring it to the wharf, we give you a nominal amount of money for it, we put it into the food chain. Like, why not? I mean, that just makes sense. Some bycatch is absolutely accidental, some maybe not so much, but the vast majority is accidental. So let's just bring it in. They give the harvester however much per pound, and let's process it and eat it. I agree. Inside that other world is some of the stupid rules around buddy up systems. And, to change the legislation with one key amendment to simply call it about adjacency being the guiding principle for every single decision made regarding the fish stock, the wild stock, that would really change a lot of things right away.
Yeah. And, let's put it, if you want to look at past records and what's happened in the past, we've gone through 10 years of absolute torture in our economy. Everything is 10 times more expensive. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's substantially more expensive than it was 10 years ago. And it has tried more. And why would anybody, like I heard you have I heard a gentleman call you the other day, and he said, if I walked in the garden, he said, and there was a dog there and you bit me, I'm not going back in that garden again tomorrow. Well, that was really, I thought, a wonderful, a wonderful analogy. That and it certainly what displays what we've gone through for over the last 10 years. I mean, we've been kicked, we've been bitten, we've been downtrodden, we've been done everything with over the last 10 years by the Liberal government. Why would anybody want to go through another 4 years of that? It's ridiculous.
I can't answer for anybody other than myself. I guess the sentiment is, which party, which leader, regardless of the past 10 years, which of the candidates putting themselves forward do you want to put your faith behind? That's kind of how I gauge where my world is, to be honest with you. I understand the affordability issues. Why? Because I live and work and pay taxes in this country. I'm the grocery shopper, so I get affordability issues. I'm just wondering out loud whether or not either party, either leader is promoting things that can change like they suggest it can. We do find ourselves in a very emotional world. Serious times require serious people, and we need more than just things are going to change because I'm going to unleash something. Unleash also needs to come with the private sector thinking there's ability to make a profit. I mean, it's always going to boil back to the same fundamentals of the economy, regardless of which party is in power. Now, if Stephen Guilbeault continues to be the Minister of the Environment, nothing's going to ever get produced again. Agreed in full. He's pretty much said the exact same thing when he greenlit Beta Nord. He said it's going to be much more difficult in the future for these projects to get approved. So I agree. The Guilbeaults of the world, very clear. Whether or not Mr. Carney has any sort of want to be anything but a net zero guy, I guess the future will tell the tale very clearly if and when the Liberals are successful. And I don't know who's going to win tonight. And last one before I let you go, Fred. Do you think we're going to find ourselves in a minority come this time tomorrow? Or I guess later this evening?
I'm sorry?
Do you think we're going to find ourselves in another minority parliament?
I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I do too.
A distinct possibility. And I'll tell you something else. Carney was governor of the Bank of England, and he nearly ruined their economy over there. They finally got rid of him, and they don't want to see him again, and they shoot him on sight. the previous Prime Minister doesn't want to hear his name because he did such a masterful job of ruining their economy over there. So
I don't take Liz Truss very seriously.
Why would we want to take that out?
I don't take Liz Truss very seriously, to be honest with you, in her 48 days at the helm. And I think you can point the UK's woes on Brexit. I got friends who live there, and they were anti-Brexit all the way. And of course, Brexit has proven to be a seriously self-inflicted wound.
Oh yeah, I never followed that part of it, but I know for a fact that he wasn't responsible for getting us out of the 2008 financial crisis here in Canada. That was Jim Flaherty and the Prime Minister at the time, Stephen Harper. His role as governor of the Bank of Canada was to follow the fiscal and monetary policies laid down by the Parliament. He didn't make any policies. They were made by Jim Flaherty as Minister of Finance and the Cabinet and the Parliament.
Yeah, primarily speaking, monetary policy belongs with central banks. And last one on that front, Mr. Carney's also saying on the campaign trail here that, under his guidance as the governor of the Bank of Canada, we avoided a recession in 2008, which is technically not true. In 2008, we experienced 3 successive quarters of loss, which is technically a recession, which he actually testified himself using his own words in front of the parliamentary committee. So when he says that he kept us from being into a recession, it's just not true. And I mean, he said so himself back in 2008. And the Brexit is the big problem in the UK today, not Mark Carney. And Liz Truss, oh my God. I know what she's been saying, but I always try to consider
more than her. It hasn't been just her. A lot of the prominent people in the UK have been saying that. Pardon me, what Carney was doing now. He advised Trudeau to print all this money and put us in the financial condition that we're in right now. And you know what? He's going to print it again. He has to print money. The only way he's going to get that $130 billion that he's got in his program is to print money. That's going to drive our inflation outrageous. And our dollar is going to sink. It's in the 60s now. It's probably going down to the 40s if he keeps printing money like that. So
I appreciate the time, Fred. I'm glad you called this morning.
No problem.
Take care.
Good talking to you, Paddy.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we go back, Paul's also in the queue to talk about the election. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Morning to you.
And did you vote yet, Paddy?
No, voting this afternoon.
Oh, perfect. I think that's what the plan is for myself and the wife. Daughter's going to have to wait till after work. So, Paddy, sounding like I'm retired, but I'm an unemployed oil and gas professional. Had been for most of this year, actually. So, Paddy, that's a little bit of a preamble to where I'm going with this. So I'm going to vote this evening, just to get ahead of myself here, because I had to wait to see what each party has to offer. I think you mentioned it last week. It's like, I'm still waiting for some good concrete numbers, something to back up what was really late coming from the PCs. I never saw Carney get stirred up much on television until the journalists start poking at him about, well, this discussion with Trump. How come you let him get away with calling us the fit for state? I mean, okay, come on. But even though he's stirred, he's calm. He's mature. He's very highly educated. You don't go to Oxford based on a GPA of 2. So in the end, I'm looking at the leaders. So I'm going top down versus Poilievre, who's a populist. He's introduced the Conservatives, and some of the media, like on TV, paints him basically like a mini Trump, but he's not a mini Trump. He seems to have some empathy, unlike Trump. I don't think he's a narcissist, but I think when I go this evening, I've made up my mind. Up until Friday, I was on the fence. I'll tell you why. When we finally found out what the PCs, along with the Liberals, have to offer, I guess what stands out for me as an oil and gas professional, unemployed, that's because we do things right offshore Newfoundland. We go on a Hibernia, we get them drilling again, post-COVID. We get 2 rigs up and running, and lo and behold, we've done our job. And I won't go down this road, maybe another day. But as an ad hoc oil and gas professional, ad hoc, Paddy, means you're temporary. You leave a platform, whether it be floating or fixed, you're laid off until you're called back. So I haven't been called back because we did everything right apparently in the last 3 years. So I hope Exxon and Hibernia is happy and they're drilling away. And this is good news for offshore oil in Newfoundland, Labrador. But what stood out like a sore thumb last week, Charlene Johnson, very, very professional, very competent leader of NL Energy. I heard her on the radio, and she never. I could see her smiling. She wasn't laughing, but she was smiling, saying, "We got everything we wanted from the PCs in a letter," and I read that letter. And I know you did too. Anyone interested in offshore oil and gas and what the various parties have to offer, read that letter. And I've heard you say at least 2 or 3 times this morning about oil production. I've been on the Hibernia for the past 3 years. Double production. The only way that's going to happen, Paddy, I haven't been on the other rigs. I've been mainly international my whole career. When I finally got through the door offshore Newfoundland, over 3 years ago, what I quickly realized on a Hibernia is that this is a 25-year-old plus rig. Most of our producing rigs out there now, Paddy, you know, because you talk to those oil and gas professionals, and they'll tell you, they're not going to turn on the tap and double production. Not either one of them or combined. So I'm thinking, what is this blanket statement, doubling production? Well, what it means, Paddy, Synovus, the next, in a snail-paced offshore Newfoundland, project to project, West White Rose is going to show up, and they're going to allow the doubling of production. No, they're not. The last figure I heard put out when they did the celebratory thing down in Argentia, we got our GBS ready to float out, and they're going to, this summer, made up with the topsides, coming up from Ingleside, Texas. And probably, I estimate, sometime in September, early fall, they're going to get, hopefully, oil flowing. At best, Paddy, that's going to equate new platform, initial production. I could be wrong about this, Paddy. I'm just putting it out there. To what a Hibernia does in a day. So if we had only 2 fixed platforms offshore producing, and the difference is Hibernia is a standalone drilling producing entity. This new gravity base, West White Rose, as you know, ties in to an FPSO, Sea Rose. So combined, our production, I would suggest, is not only not going to double, it can't double. Not next week, not next month, not next year. It's not going to double because Poilievre is making these blanket statements, not knowing how it really works. You know, that I didn't work in production. I worked in drilling, okay? And I'm sure if you talk to someone, a technical person, a production lead, they'll tell you there's a lot goes into producing oil, and you can increase pressures down hole in the reservoir, and that will bring up the numbers. But that's not an easy task. You have reservoir stabilities. You have a whole lot of factors that a whole lot of engineers and higher-ups at your Exxons and Cenovus are looking at. And I'm sure when they heard that blanket statement, they looked at each other and laughed. So the point to all that is I take that 2-page letter of all kinds of facts and figures and very specific-looking statements with a grain of salt, okay? The unfortunate thing is the Liberals never even responded. So right now I'm going to take that guarded response by the Liberal government and Kearney as we're not going to promise the world because we can't. And you know why, Patty? Because we got a bully to the south of us, the most powerful man in the world, on stage. You don't disagree with him because you'll be fired. So he has a lot of smart people around him that look kind of moronic like himself and childlike, because he's the most childlike speaker and presenter I've ever seen in a man's suit. And he basically is calling the shots, not only to the south of us, but in this political race. This is why, you know, if you haven't picked up on it already, how I'm going to vote this evening. Now, everybody I've heard on has legitimate points about the very specifics of the PCs. Like, I'd vote for David Brazel if I wasn't in the Avalon district. But because David presents himself well, he can go to Ottawa. He can go with the feds and talk amongst any of them and make his point. But if he's going to be the only PC, we've still got 7 seats, I believe.
Yep.
If he's the only one, and we have a sea of red, the sea of red they're talking about, I don't know if it's changed. I've cut myself off since Thursday, Friday of last week. But the last thing I heard was Quebec is going red. Patty, this is historical. You know, it's right back to the FLQ in the 60s, and now the separatist movement, and the Quebec parties are at a standstill because if you talk to people in Quebec, my son lives in Quebec, they are relying on leadership to deal with the most powerful bully in the world. And that's a fact. Is that going to get seniors, you know, the health care, the doctors that they need? Just as an aside, not going down a rabbit hole, people say I do that a lot. I listened to Mary on your show last week with my wife, sitting at the table. I could almost cry. Here's someone who came back to Newfoundland, and she didn't have a doctor. And anyway, I won't go down that road.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
That was a tough one. Yep. So I just want to say, people have their own agendas, and they're good for them. They're saying, I need this. I need health care. I need the homeless to have homes. I need that. I want to see that. So I think the PCs can do it, or I think the Liberals can do it. But a lot of that, Patty, is contingent on this pivotal time in history that someone could lead Canada through a time when, I don't know if you listen to I get it, I haven't subscribed to it yet. It's only $4 a month, I think, but the Logic, they presented some very good, I think it's Mr. Carmichael, he's a head economist with the Logic. And he pointed out a very glaring statement about Trump. And basically, right now it brings us back to colonial times between the British and the French. And I'm not going to go into history, but the point being, we got too comfortable. When the dust settled and the British were where the British should be and the French are where the French should be, we established a friendly, neighbor-like existence in North America. Two big neighbors, Canada and the U.S., and we became too comfortable. We relied on America for our military, I'd say, assistance, but we really know the real story there. We relied on America, made in America goods. Let me ask you this, Patty, if you see something
quickly before I have to go.
Yeah, made in America, made in China. What are you going to buy?
I mean, I don't know. It depends on what we're talking about, number one. But look, the relationship with
I'm going to buy from China, Patty, because I tell you what, it might only last half as long as made in America, but if it costs 5 times as much, I can afford it. So that's the dynamic we're in now. We almost have to align ourselves like we align ourselves, the states, and Trump in his tyranny is aligning the states, the MAGA movement, make America great again. So I think the Liberals are going to make Canada great again. They're not anti-green, by the way. Anti-oil, people are listening to me now saying, oh, they're anti-oil. No, they're not. Bill C-61 has intent. Can it be toned down? Maybe. Can it be repealed, as Mr. Poilievre suggests? That's ludicrous. You don't repeal impact assessments. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to what you had to offer there, and people wonder why focus on Trump. I mean, we have an interconnected economy. It's as fundamental as it. And even when it looks like we've escaped a lot of the threatened tariffs, and there's still plenty in place, but this ongoing, what looks to be an unstoppable trade war between the Americans and the Chinese, you don't think that's going to impact Canada? Then you're probably not following along. Paul, I really do have to go, but I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Okay, when we come back, Liam's in the queue. He wants to talk about some support from a certain outfit in Ontario for the Conservative Party of Canada. And, of course, we don't have PCs anymore. And that's not splitting hairs. That's just the reality. It is now the CPC. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Liam, you're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Daly. How are you?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
Oh, good. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Toronto. It's going to be a nice warm one.
Lovely.
So I wanted to talk about, I saw an article on CTV and CBC a little while ago that the police union or association, not only in Ottawa, but Sault Ste. Marie and another place that I can't quite remember off the top of my head, came out supporting the Conservative Party of Canada, and I just feel that's a little, I don't know, scary in the sense because it should be for the people. There shouldn't be allegiance to one party or whatnot. You're the police. You're for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like or who you vote. You're there for people, not political, ideologies and parties and whatnot. And I would say the same thing if that was New Democratic Party or if that was Liberal or Green or Quebec or Bloc Québécois. I can't speak this morning, but it's not just because it's conservative, but it's just that's a little icky for me. And I don't know if you have any more information on that or any insightful thoughts to share.
Well, I can add to the fact that the Toronto Police Association also endorsed the Conservatives. So that's Ottawa, the Sioux, and I think another couple of smaller municipalities, but also the Toronto Police Association. So that's a lot when you add that to the conversation. And, of course, they talk about the Conservatives' commitments to public safety and expanding policing and maybe giving different authorities too. I think they're also pretty much supportive of the idea that's floated regarding Section 33 of their charter, the notwithstanding clause. the pushback on that one is really funny, because if I think, and I do think, that there's a good reason why the federal government has not used the notwithstanding clause ever since 1982, is because I think some of these rulings belong in the courts, not in the House of Commons. So the specific issue he's talking about there is a Supreme Court decision back in 2022 that, you know, they were talking about giving consecutive 25-year blocks of parole ineligibility. So multiple life sentences with no chance for parole for folks who are mass killers. They're not getting out already. So the notwithstanding clause, those types of rulings belong in the courts, to me. And whether or not people say, oh, you want to be soft on murderers. No, I'm talking about the reality. If you're Paul Bernardo or Williams or Picton, they're not getting out anyway, right? So, I mean, this whole... And then it's what's next. So, again, if you're a staunch Conservative supporter this morning, so be it. Vote with whoever you want to. But what happens when successive governments, which will change hands, if it all of a sudden becomes acceptable for the feds to use the notwithstanding clause to circumvent judicial rulings, that could be a problem. So I think it's been a problem politically speaking when we talk about the times that it has been utilized by provincial governments. Quebec used it to pass language reform. Ontario used it to legislate education workers back in 2022. So I think these things belong in the courts. If we use it as a political football, I think we're setting ourselves up for problems into the future. So a Conservative supporter now who thinks Poilievre's on the right track, what happens if the Liberals win sometime down the road, 4-8 years from now, and they do it on a political issue that the Conservatives don't like? Then we've got a now fully accepted federal government use of the notwithstanding clause, which I think is bad for everybody, regardless.
I'm on you with that. I'm on you with that one. It should never be 200%. I mean, yes, I totally agree. Yes, period. That's really it. I do agree, and I think that you can get in sticky situations, and especially then when you're talking about, you know, education and stuff like that. You know, like I'm currently working on a play that I wrote that takes place in Brazil during the military dictatorship in the 60s and 70s, and it's really interesting how similar things are, you know, whether that be here in Canada or in the United States, to that time in history regarding censorship, regarding conversations about police and stuff like that. It's history really does repeat itself, and it can be a very scary thing.
It can be. I'm not in the mood to be scared or scare anyone, but people can evaluate the different parties and their policies as they see fit. Liam, I appreciate the time. Break a leg with your new production, and we'll talk again soon.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.
The same to you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Liam was talking about a play that he's produced. Cole Haley's a playwright. He's got a play coming up at the LSPU Hall. We'll talk with Cole, and then we'll speak with you on whatever's on your mind right after this. Welcome back to the program. Cole Haley is a playwright and bringing a performance called There's Nothing You Can Do to the LSPU Hall beginning on the 7th of May. And Cole joins us on line number 3. Good morning, Cole. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. Now, I may or may not be having a midlife crisis, but there's something called a quarter-life crisis. What's that?
Yeah. I think it's all very similar to a midlife crisis. It's just a bit of uncertainty about your future, a bit of like disconnect from the person you are versus the person you thought you would be. I think it's a mini midlife crisis for a lot of people. It can happen from the age of, like I had mine, I think when I was 16, but people have them at 16, at 25, at 30, etc.
What's interesting inside this concept here is, you know, when we're growing up and we get through high school, we've got all these hopes and aspirations and goals we want to achieve. Then adult life kicks in and maybe you splinter away from your old pals, but eventually reconnect. And then, of course, it's looking back to what you thought, where you thought you'd be compared to where you are. How does that play into this performance?
Yeah, it plays in just like that. It's about a group of friends who all come back together around their 10-year high school reunion. They throw this impromptu party, and then what happens is, they fall into this collective quarter-life crisis, which recontextualizes. There was a dancing plague in the 1500s in France, in Strasbourg, and it was nobody really knows exactly what happened, but basically this one community, one person started to dance, and then somebody else started to dance, and then all of a sudden all these people were infected with dance and dancing themselves to death. And, there's a lot of theories as to why, but the most common theory is this psychological mass break, because this was an area that was just decimated by the Black Plague. There was this idea that they all thought that they were sinners and that they were being punished by God. And when I was thinking of this play and I was going through this quarter-life crisis, I was thinking of my friends and this was right after the COVID pandemic, and it felt just a great metaphor for that feeling and this idea that, dancing is one of the most alive things you can possibly do, and it could be killing you. It just felt it all clicked together when I was trying to discover this, how do I show a quarter-life crisis on stage.
Fair enough. And there was the dancing plague, which is a fascinating story. But even in more recent times, in the early 60s, there was a giggling plague called the Tanganyika laughing epidemic, which lasted for several weeks. Thousands of people fell prey to this mass hysteria or mass psychosis. Primarily, they were schoolgirls. But it's a fascinating examination of the mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like a sense of community. It's a weird, like a community thing where, you're going through something, you're trying to seek out other people who are also going through it. And I think most mass psychology breaks happen because it's, in a weird way, it's a way for us to also be connected through something traumatic. And I think, COVID, this is not a play about COVID, but it's a play that was definitely born out of that period. And I was really searching for, looking back on better times when I was having, house parties with my friends, and this felt like the perfect story to kind of get me out of that spot and to develop.
I'm not trying to be corny or goofy or anything here, but, I just saw Skeet. And it was a real examination of a place where I live and the new face of the place where I live. But it was also some sort of love letter. And I think you're trying to portray there's nothing you can do as a love letter as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's very much about me growing up in St. John. So I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Elston, but I moved to St. John's when I was 17. And, I cut my teeth going to shows downtown or hang out with at house parties till way too late. And, I spent a lot of my early 20s, mid-20s doing exactly that, like going to these parties and meeting people. And it felt like such a kinetic energy. And I think also when COVID happened, there's a big sense of sadness about losing that sense of community and feeling like you're missing out on these pivotal years. So it really is, I'm trying to promote this as a love letter to St. John's. And if you're somebody who grew up in the city or around the city and you remember going to these shows or these house parties or these house shows, this is a show that I think will be very familiar and characters that you probably know. I see all my friends that I, met throughout my years living here in the characters in this piece. So it's very special to. The show originally premiered when I was at the National Theatre School in Montreal, and it was great to have it performed there. But it was always my dream to bring it back to St. John's, and I'm so happy that the LSPU Hall has decided to bring it back.
Stupid question, off topic. Did you have a root cellar in Elliston?
Oh yes, yeah. We have two, I think, but they're used for tires now. Like we have no root vegetables in it.
Yeah, Elliston, known as the root cellar capital of the world, which is why I asked. And funny story from my youth is I locked my sister Andrea in my nanny's root cellar. That did not go well for me. Okay, let's move on very quickly before we run out of time. And just a little bit of background on Cole. Really quite accomplished, the recipient of the 2023 Playwrights Guild of Canada RBC Emerging Playwright Award, two-time winner of the Arts and Letters. So that's a good starting point to launch into the where, the whens, what do people need to know if they'd like to go take in There's Nothing You Can Do.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. So the show's actually coming up pretty soon. Our opening day is May 7th. So that's at 8 p.m. And after that, there will be a reception. So you can come and talk to some of the cast if you want to. There'll be some food and all that's provided by the LSPU and free if you come by for the ticket. After that, we're having the show on May 8th, May 9th, May 10th is also a live stream day. So if you're somebody who's listening who is not in the city, there's a live stream option available. And then on May 11th will be our closing matinee, and that will be a relaxed performance. So that will be at 2 p.m. And a relaxed performance basically means the performance will be a little bit more a little bit more relaxed. The lights will be a little bit more up. There will be no pressure to, stay if you need to use the bathroom, or if you have some kind of sensory issues, then you can come to that show. There will also be, I think it's the first time ever, there's going to be live subtitling with, I forget the company, but it's a Finnish company that's doing this pilot initiative with the LSP Hall. So if you need live subtitling, you can come, and there'll be an app that you'll get access to on your phone, and then you'll see the subtitles on your phone as the show is performed. So I think this is the first play in Canada that this is happening with this Finnish company on May 11th at the matinee.
Break a leg. You can go to the LSPU Hall's webpage, and you'll just Google up RCA Theatre Company, and you'll find a link to buy a ticket online, or you can simply call the hall, 709-753-4531. Cole, good to have you on the show. Break a leg.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. I know there wasn't much else happening today, so I appreciate you getting me on.
I'm glad you called. Thanks, pal. All right, bye-bye. It's Cole Haley. Playwright, there's nothing you can do. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Loretta, you're on the air.
Yes, could you tell me if they have rights today for the people that can get to the election place?
Absolutely. If you call any of the candidates' offices in the federal riding that you live in, they'll pick you up.
Oh, will they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
No problem at all.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Loretta. Yeah, generally speaking, every candidate has some of those supports in place because they need your vote, and they will get you to the polling station. Let's go to line number 2. Florence, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Good. Thanks for asking. Patty, I have... Are you still there?
I'm just listening. Go ahead.
Okay. Patty, for 2 years, I have been trying to get a government building from the government that's basically been abandoned. Beautiful building, beautiful lot. I'm prepared to bring in a contractor to do the renovations. This contractor specializes in asbestos, and the building is floor to ceiling, full of it. I have all intentions of remodeling it to bring it to a 100-room seniors affordable housing unit. These seniors can bring in their bedroom set, so they have their own bedroom set. They're familiar with things around there. They can bring their own lounge chair for in the common areas. There's going to be libraries. There's going to be people brought in to do the ladies' hairs, the men's cuts, the nails. There's going to be physiotherapy room. In case there's another pandemic or an outbreak of another disease, there's going to be room set up on each wing that these people will be behind the special glass, and their loved ones will be on the other side, and they can talk to them. I've been, like I said, 2 years trying to get this on the go. I have the contractors ready. I have a manager in mind. She has all the staff picked out. I have quotes on the renovations, the kitchen supplies, the bathroom supplies, the paint, everything. I have all my ducks in a row, and I can't get my hands on this. To date, I have sent proposals to or emails to Helen Conway-Ottenheimer, Fred Hutton, John Abbott, Robin Bursey, she's with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, Matthew Cooper, he's the executive assistant to Fred Hutton. Fred is the Minister of Housing, the Minister overlooking housing, I believe. Bradley George, Minister Pam Parsons, Jutmek Singh in the federal department, Brian Butt in the CMHC, a gentleman by the name of Jim Barnes. He's been fantastic. Premier Andrew Fury, Ministers Paul Pike, Steve Crocker, Dan McKenzie, the town of Carbonear, Grayson Kelly, he's in NL Housing, Darrell Kelly, Transportation and Infrastructure, There's a gentleman, Corey Grundy, Minister Tom Osborne. I've sent a proposal to the CEO of Newfoundland Housing, Julia, I'm probably going to say her name wrong, Malawi. Malawi, sorry, yes. I apologize for that one.
No problem.
Minister Jerry Byrne, Minister Andrew Parsons, PC leader Tony Wakeham, NDP leader Jim Dinn, and the list goes on and on and on. I'm getting nowhere with this. Now they're telling me that they have to put this building and what to do with it in front of a group of people, and they have to decide, okay, are we going to put this up on tender? Are we just going to tear it down and sell the land? What's going to happen with it? I want this building. I'm the only one that wants this building. These people know that I want it. The reason I want it for affordable housing, and this is probably going to blow your mind, I came in contact with a couple of senior citizens. One of them told me in the Conception Bay North area, there was a lady, her husband done everything. The banking, bought the food, mowed the lawn, you name it, he done it. He pampered her. He passed away. She was left alone in the house. One son in Alberta, she said, the TV, Eastlink is getting too expensive. So he bought her a cell phone and paid for the cable. Months later, they come to find her. She's dehydrated and malnourished on the floor. She was tearing down wooden things in her house to put it in the wood stove to stay heated so she wouldn't freeze to death. There were so many holes in the roof of her house that she had pots and pans everywhere. Her water had froze that winter, and she was drinking this water.
That's awful.
We should never...
Florence, I have a very quick question. Where in the province is this building?
Conception Bay North area.
Okay. I was just curious because there's distinct lack of seniors housing in many parts of the province. You know, I guess you can also extend that to right here in the capital city, but I was just curious where this building is. And so are you getting any answers as to why the hold-up, or are they simply just unwilling to say no to your proposal? Like, I'm not really sure what's going on here, other than the fact that left and right hands not knowing what each other is doing in government is order of the day.
Exactly. They all know about me. I'm the greasy wheel that's not getting any grease. So I have talked to so many people, and they keep saying, talk to this one, talk to this one. So now I'm starting to recycle these numbers and people that I'm talking to. And one gentleman, and I'm not going to say it online because I don't want him to get in any trouble, but one of them actually said to me, I'm not allowed to speak to you anymore regarding this. Honest to God, like I just sat back and I went, what do you mean you're not allowed to speak to me? He says, I'm not allowed to speak to you with regards to this property. You have to go through the minister. So, of course, I started going through the minister, and I'm getting nowhere there.
Florence, do you have a business model that has the capital required to do what you're planning on doing?
I do.
So you got the money?
Thank you. Yes. And I also have a company set up that I can get funding, no problem. The problem is I can get the funding, but I need the building in my name before I do it. And I can't, therein lies the problem. I can't get the building in my name. It's just sitting there, and the longer it sits there, the more dilapidated it gets.
And the costlier it will be. So, from past experience, what you're going to really need to maybe hopefully get some traction here is you're going to need a authorized letter from a lender committing to the funding if and when the transfer of property takes place. Because government is not going to, and again, just based on past experience, government is not going to transfer ownership unless they know that there's an intended purpose that will be followed through on and the person has the money. So I'd get a letter from the lender committing to the funding, because without that, you're probably going to be just passed around like you have been at this moment.
Yeah, and that's not a problem for me to get the letter. They've already said it.
Okay.
But they're stating that I need the building in my name in order to actually get it. So, I mean, I can get that letter. That's not a problem. The problem is that it almost seems like, excuse my language, they're pussyfooting around. And now all of a sudden, we're going to put it up on tender to see who else wants it. Well, why would you do that when you've got so many senior citizens out there that are walking the malls with a cup of tea in their hand because they have to choose between heat, lights, cable phone, internet, food, medication, and a lot of them that I'm talking to had to do repairs on their houses, so they had to get a grant. And when they get a grant, they sign a paper that states they're not allowed to do anything with that house but live in it for 5 years. If they sell the house or give it off to, say, their grandson, then they have to pay back this money.
Right.
So they're in a bad spot.
Tender is government protection for itself. Unfortunately, what we hear sometimes is when government does not go to tender, then the accusation is, well, you just did a favour for your buddy. And I have no earthly idea if you have any buddies in government, but I guess they do put that bit of self-protection in place, and they don't always do it, which is also a problem. Florence, keep me in the loop if you don't mind. I have to get going to the break here, but I'd like to get an update when you have one.
Absolutely. I'll keep you in line. Thank you.
Thanks, Florence. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Beverly Jordan. You're on the air.
Petty, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, Beverly. How about you?
Well, I'm not a very happy person. As you know, I've called in before about my daughter, Constable Robin Jordan. And I was going to call in a few times this week, but I couldn't because I'm so heartbroken. Some of Robin's friends put a memorial stool up in Fairyland, which we grew up calling the Downs, and it's out by Fairyland Lighthouse. And when the girls called me about the stool with Robin's picture and pictures of her dogs and a memorial for her, I decided that I would let my mom decide where she wanted to put it, because she's an outdoor person. And anyway, the story can go on about her when it comes to Robin. And anyways, I went up and spent Easter with my mom. I'm an only child, and we're so broken over Robin, as you only can imagine. And a friend of the family goes out there every other day for a walk, and she went out there Friday to discover that, or Saturday, Easter Saturday, and discovered that Robin's bench was no longer there. So lots of people goes out there and they go down and visit it. It's right next to the cannon, and says a prayer with her, or has a chat with her, or sit down and have a smoke, or whatever the case may be.
Beverly, before we go on, I just want to give people some context here so that we know what we're talking about. So Constable Robin Jordan died suddenly just over a year ago in Labrador City. So I'm not going to ask you about the circumstances unless you want to share, but I just wanted people to know exactly who Robin Jordan was, because some people may have forgotten the name and forgotten the story. So I think it was early March of last year where she passed away suddenly. And again, one more time, my condolences. So now I'll let you continue on. I just wanted to let people know what we were talking about.
Okay, so Robin was a RNC officer here in the city for approximately 4 years, and she got transferred to Labrador City. She was down there 5.5 months, and whatever happened, Robin took her own life. So that's hard enough on me and my son and my mother and the community and all her friends and co-workers, whatever. So Easter Saturday, or probably during the night, Friday night, Friday her bench was there. Saturday it was gone. So a lady who is a member of the family, actually her name is Molly, I won't give her last name, go out there all the time, as well as lots of people, and do what I just told you to do, to go down, say a prayer, they talk to her, they have sitting on her bench, have a cigarette. Anyways, somebody went out there and took it up on themselves to try to destroy her bench. And it takes like 4 men to lift it because it's all concrete. And they tried to throw it down over the cliff so it would land like down on the rocks by the ocean. Of course, it got halfway, and whether they continued or got that out, or I don't really know. But that's what they did. And I just want to say this to everybody that's listening to Open Line. Whether it is a fireman, paramedics, police, whatever, when they put on their uniforms to go to work, they're putting their life on the line. And this day and age, because of everything that's happening with shootings and stabbings and this and that, it's worse than it was back in the day. And for some reason, people are so disrespecting, have no respect anymore for the law in any which way or form. And they don't sit back and think that these people, when they get up in the morning, go to work, they got a mom, they got a dad, they got siblings, they got families. It's their job. And why people are out destroying what they're doing and disrespected, whether it's my daughter or anybody's child, to do that, like, what is going on in their heads? Like, why are they doing this stuff? And why are they getting away with it? Because I tell you, the community of Fairyland and the Southern Shore and beyond has contacted me over what they did to Robin, Constable Jordan Robin, but she's still Robin, she's still my child, would do the likes of that. Like I am, and my mom and my son and my family and my friends and hers are going through enough. Robin took her life on March the 9th of last year, and to a lot of people, that's old news now. But to me, and the people who really loved and cared about her, it's like it happened yesterday. And Patty, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I can be, or I was, like I could snap in a blink when it comes to my children and my family and stuff when people are deliberately hurting people. But this is uncalled for. This is so unfair. Whoever did this is so heartless. Like, where is their minds? What are they thinking? Like, the police, and I'm going to defend the police because that's who my daughter was, a police officer, RNC, Constable Robin Jordan. She went out there to try to help and take care of whomever she could. And she was really into helping people with mental health. So do they hate the police, and do they hate the people that are really out there to help them? Like, where do this stop, or where does it end? So for me and the community of Fairyland, we know who did it, but we can't prove it. We can't prove it. We know who did it. Because this guy that's going around the community is not only did this, he's done it. He's like doing it all over the community, but nobody can touch him because he's going around with a rifle all the time. And apparently, he's allowed to do it because he got a small games license. So I know that probably you and a lot of people can tell me what to do. So I will tell you this, the community helped us, me and my mom, to get it back up, okay? And we brought it down to the graveyard in Fairyland and put it by her headstone. So you know what's on my mind ever since? Is her headstone and that bench going to be set up down by her gravesite in Fairyland? Because some people hate police. If you hate police, then obviously you're doing something wrong yourself. Like, why don't you let the girl rest in peace? Like, if she did anything for you, she helped you. Patty, listen, I am so upset, and I'm so sad, and I'm so mad, and I'm so hurt that somebody could do that.
I understand.
Why?
Regardless of why they did it, the fact that they did it, period, is all bad enough. Beverly, I'm really sorry to hear it happened. And if you know who did this and you know where the bench is, if it's not already beat up, can you please ensure it's brought back to where it belongs? I'm really sorry, Beverly.
Oh, we got it, Patty. We got the bench.
But you need the person who... I get it. Okay.
We got the bench with help of the community, but the fact is that, like, why would somebody go out there and decide to destroy that? Why? I don't understand why. Like, that was my mom, and that was the community and Robin's friends. That was their little peace of mind to go out there and see that and read it and all that, and somebody else decided to do that. No, Patty, like, where does this stop? Or I'm going to say this to you, and to anyone that's listened to Open Line, I miss my daughter more than anybody will ever know, and I don't stand alone. I know people that lost their children too, but for somebody to do this, how heartless are they? Like, why don't you just let us, like, grieve and do what we got to do?
I understand, Beverly. They're cold-hearted, to say the very least. I have to get going, but I'm really sorry this happened to you, Beverly. And hopefully, if there's the possibility for someone to be taken to task for what they did, I hope that happens. And I appreciate your time. I wish you well.
Okay, Patty, thank you very much.
Thank you,
sorry
Beverly.
that I'm crying and stuff, but
It's
I'm
okay.
broken.
It's okay, and I completely understand.
Okay, have a good day, Patty. Thanks
too.
for listening.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Let's take a break for the news. When we get back, a bit more election talk. Grant also wants to talk about blood testing protocols. What does that mean? We'll find out. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Doc. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Very well. How about you?
Very good, I must say. The weather is not nice, but so be it. We know we have to live with it.
Yep.
I'm on my way up to vote now, Paddy, shortly, my wife and I figured now before I go up and cast my ballot, I'd give you a shout and tell you which direction I'm going in. How about that?
Oh, I'm supposed to care. Okay, sorry, Doc. Nothing, I'm only kidding. I know you're voting for it, but go ahead.
No, well, I have a number of reasons, Paddy, to say that I'm hoping, as a lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are hoping, and Canadians, that we'll see tonight a Conservative victory, be it a minority or a majority. And I got a few reasons for that, Paddy, which I think are strong enough for me to go in that direction. First off, I think the Conservative policies toward Newfoundland and Labrador in particular, are very, very good. They're very, very promising. They are, if they are upheld, at least they will provide us with a positive path into the future, in particular when it comes to things like offshore gas and oil production, when it comes to future exploration in the offshore, issues regarding Bill C-69, I think, that have to be dealt with. Natural resources, our fishery, all of these, the Conservative Party seems to be taking us in the right direction. And if we're going to have any future for the next few generations, it's going to have to be the Conservative Party. Now, if you look at the Liberal performance over the past 10 years, they failed. They failed miserably. They have been scandal-ridden almost from the very beginning. There has been rampant patronage and nepotism. There's been financial mismanagement. Our economy, our dollar, everything is down. it was the Liberal government for the past 10 years that had brought us to that point. So, to use a hockey analogy, they need time in the penalty box. They need to sit down, they need to reevaluate who they are and what Canada needs and take us in the right direction. And, like recently, in the past few days, all of a sudden, some members of the same old crew, because that's what we're going to get if we vote Liberal. The captain jumped ship, but the crew are still the same. You have the same tired old faces who disappeared about 3 weeks ago. Melanie Joly, Stephen Guilbeault, who, what can I say about his attitude toward Newfoundland offshore? That is positive. Bill Blair, and I could go on and on with the list. It's the same old tired faces. If as a government or a hockey team, if your performance is good and up to standard and your behavior is good, then you need to be rewarded. If it isn't good, you need to go to the penalty box. And that's where they deserve to be at this point in time for at least one term, maybe more. Now, one of the things, Paddy, that has leaped out in this election at me, and it's been created really by the Liberal Party, and that is they've tried to make this an election about one thing, and that thing is Donald Trump. Now, as Canadians, we know we have to deal with Donald Trump. But as Canadians, we also know that we have a whole lot of other problems that need to be dealt with. And I don't have to go down and list all of them, but you know them. People who live in Newfoundland, Labrador, and people who live in Canada know all the issues with the Canadian dollar, inflation, housing, the collapse of our health system, and on and on and on it goes.
Some of which are federal and some of which are not.
Some of which are, yes, and many of them are federal funded and some are not. There's no doubt about that. But the federal government is the preeminent government for the country of Canada, and they have to shoulder the fact that they now decide the key issue is Trump. I recently, in this past week, there's one Liberal candidate in Newfoundland and Labrador who hasn't, as far I hear the ad on every day, vote for me so we can send Mark Carney to stand up to Trump. Not vote for me because I can do what I can to help your health care, or vote for me because I'll try to deal with unemployment, or vote for me because I'll get into the issues of the fishery that are so important to Newfoundland and Labrador. Vote for me because I'll be in favor of more housing. It's vote for me so we can send Carney to Washington. Now, I've never met Donald Trump, and I've never been in Washington. But I can guarantee you this, that Donald Trump is not down there today, sitting in his office in Washington, scared to death that Carney may come to Washington.
It's not about that. It's not about that.
I'll just say this, Paddy.
Okay, quickly, because I have to go.
Yeah, a few days ago, for the first time in several weeks, Donald Trump had laid off Canada. And then a few days ago, 4 days ago, in fact, all of a sudden he started in his anti-Canada rant again. And I was saying to myself, well, why now? Why 4 days before Election Day? And the only answer that could come to me is that he wants Carney to win the election because he can take on and handle Carney easier than he can Pierre Poilievre. So we need change if we're going to go forward.
Appreciate the time, Doc. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. You take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, final break of the morning. I don't think we'll get to everybody, but we'll sure try. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Chris, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, you?
Good. I went to 3 different polling stations this morning, and I just come in from offshore, 28-day hitch, and there's nowhere to vote. They won't take. I'm from Gander, and they won't take me anywhere. Is there anything do you know of that you can do to correct that?
You can't. During the advance polls, people can vote for whatever federal riding, wherever Elections Canada has an office. On election day itself, you either have to vote with your registration card and or have proof of who you are, where you live, and if it's not your federal riding, you can't vote in it.
No kidding. There's no exceptions for people working offshore or anything like that?
No, there isn't. And there hasn't been for a long time. And I think there's reasons why, but I've got a bunch of people telling me the exact same story here this morning, because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about advance polls and people could indeed vote in different ridings, but on election day proper, you can't.
Okay. Right on. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate yours. Thanks, Chris. Bye-bye. I mean, but it also gets silly inside individual ridings. Even if it's not my polling station, but it is my riding. Like this fella sent me a note. His mother has to travel, I think it's like 15 minutes, so she doesn't have a way to get to where she's supposed to vote. But there's another Elections Canada office 5 minutes away, which she thinks she can get to, but it's not her polling station, and she can't vote there. That makes no sense. If it's your riding, you should be able to vote wherever you see fit. If it's not your riding, I understand the rules change on election day. Line number 5. Edgar, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty.
Hi, Edgar.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, hi, Patty. I had to get a tooth pulled this morning, so that's why I'm off work. But fantastic show, listening to you guys. No, I just called to put my support behind the Liberals, or Tom Osborne. The reason why I do that is because, again, there's so many issues where it's with crime and drugs and the cost of living and whatnot. And I've reached out to Tom numerous times. And at times when I was, unfortunately, I probably had a few drinks in me, I was disrespectful to him, but he was never disrespectful. He always responded. And we talked about the issues. I was upset about derelict property, provincial properties around the city, high schools, the other properties that were sold off and fell into disrepair. I first went after the mayor, and it was the mayor who told me to go after, well, he said, I have limited powers. So at the end of the day, he said, go after provincial government. So and Tom's my representative, so I went after Tom. And the man is always he's always treated me with respect, and he delivered on many things, on taking down the old nurses' residence, cleaning up the war memorial, and purchasing the property next door. That was my big thing. I was extremely upset about that. And he delivered on that. And I work in fire protection. And, I worked on the new mental health hospital, which is well overdue. I've worked all over Newfoundland and Labrador. I've seen the issues. I worked in Nakwashish and met a young woman who's now not with us. I was doing the high school, but she's not with us anymore. But anyway, the new hospital is well overdue, and I'm the walk to walk or talk to talk, and they delivered for me. So.
I guess there's a reason why he got elected repeatedly. Whether or not he's a good constituency man is a matter of opinion, based on the parties you support, I guess. But at 28 years, he did something right for somebody. Whether or not he wins in Cape Spear, I have no earthly idea. But name recognition is always going to be a big issue, and we'll see where the chips fall this evening. And Edgar, I appreciate you making time. Would you like to say anything else before I try to sneak on one more call?
No, I feel that they're trying their best, and mental health is a absolutely massive issue here, and they're trying to address it. And it's just anyway. I that's why I support them.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time, Edgar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Patty.
Quick recovery with the tooth. There's nothing worse than a sore tooth. All right. Final word this morning likely goes to line number 4. Grant, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patrick. I won't keep you long. I know you're trying to wrap up.
No problem.
I recently had some blood work done at the request of a doctor. I'm a gentleman that's pushing up now close to 60, trying to look after my health. So I had a conversation with a doctor through Teledoc. Great service, by the way. I really like it. And based on that discussion, we had some general blood work that was done just to assess my general health. So I went through with that, and it was only 2 days later I got a call back from the doctor saying, I'd like to discuss your blood work. And, she was sort of going down through the list, and, there were a couple of tests that were not performed. And I thought that was strange. And I said, well, why would they not be done? But apparently it's a directive from government to not perform some tests unless there's a specific reason, a specific ask from the physician to do that test. So I went back and I was looking at the requisition because it was emailed to me, and I presented it the day I had my blood work done. There's no indication on there that asks for special circumstances to be noted for certain tests. So I just thought it strange that they wouldn't be performed. And one of them that was done was a PSA test. Of course, the prostate-specific antigen is a good indicator for men's health with the condition of the prostate. I've got some friends of mine now that are going through some issues with prostate cancer, and of course, when you hear that, if we'd only gotten to this sooner, I mean, that's the thing that nobody wants to hear. But when we take the proactive approach, and after the discussion with a trained medical professional, that doctor deemed this would be, a good test to be performed, and to get the results to, we're just looking for a snapshot of my health. But to see that wasn't considered at the lab along with another test, because maybe a directive by government as potentially a cost-cutting thing, I just find it strange that the reason we go to a doctor is to get the professional help and advice that we need to assess and maintain our health. So here I am now with another requisition to go back and get those 2 blood tests done again, because again, the doctor deems that this is important to my health, and it's something that we should monitor. So now I've got to go make an appointment and go back and get the same thing done again. It just, I was very surprised to hear it.
Yeah, there's no cost cutting, because all it means is a second appointment, more cost. If you get to the issue earlier, early intervention is less cost. So if it's a cost cutting strategy, it's a poor one, because it doesn't make any sense. Grant, I hope your health is well, and I'll give you the final thoughts because we're right up against noon.
Yep. No, other than that, it's, I think I do want to put one plug in for the Teledoc system. It's a fabulous system. You call one day. I've never had to wait any longer than 2 days to speak to a physician. Very prompt, very professional. I would take that service hands down. Kudos to the people that are involved in it. It's a good move.
Appreciate your time, Grant. I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah, wish you a good day, sir.
You too, sir. Bye-bye. All right, good show today. Should be a handful tomorrow when we will indeed pick up this conversation right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.